Good, how are you? Do you want a paper copy? I never added the three-person. I did find out that it was approved. So if we want to like quick edit, because I wasn't here. Okay. I was picking up my daughter.
No worries. Okay, got it.
You know.
How are you?
Yeah, I should too.
Welcome to the Land Use Board meeting of September the 4th, 2024. We will begin by saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic
which stands one nation, under God.
Pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in the entrance hall of the Beach Haven Municipal Building and mailing the same to the Beach Haven Times and the Asbury Park Press. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision for each individual application. Decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Mrs. Eddles? Not here. Mrs. Leonard? Here. Mr. Balbo?
Here.
Mr. Tinquist?
Here.
Mr. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Jenna?
Here.
Mayor Davis? Not here. Mr. Meadow?
Here.
Mrs. Ballmiller? Here. Mr. LaFredo?
Here.
Mr. Wanger? Miss King?
Here.
Mr. Halpern?
Here,
First thing on the agenda tonight, the board will review zoning ordinance 2024-27C. I assume you all have a chance to read this and go over it. Do you have any comments? Any discussion? Or Frank, do you want to explain?
Well, we had to review this for consistency with the master plan. So we didn't find anything specific in the master plan, so to speak, that where we were looking to pass an ordinance specifically mentioned, but one of the other options is to determine whether it's not inconsistent. So we couldn't find anything in the master plan that would say that this ordinance isn't consistent. As much as I wrote this, I still had some concerns about a couple of things. One, we're going to 10,000 square foot for duplexes. The concern is what happens to the duplexes that are on 6,000 square feet? Do they become grandfathered, or if somebody wants an addition, do they become totally non-conforming?
No.
And we're gonna have a lot coming before the board.
No, they're not. As long as they're in a zone that allows duplexes, they're not a non-conforming
But
structure.
if they're not on a 10,000 square foot lot, they're non-conforming in terms of a bulk requirement. So if they add an addition or anything like that to the building that conforms,
Not unless,
they then have to come before the board. That was one question. I
right,
had.
no, and this was, we discussed this, I wrote this with Phil, the zoning officer,
Okay.
and Vive, his assistant, so
Mhm.
they will not be, the current duplexes, as long as they're in a zone that allows duplexes,
Right.
they will still be conforming. They will not become a
So
non-conforming
if somebody
structure.
comes in for an addition, they'll give them and meets the setbacks and
Yes,
things,
yes,
they'll be fine.
correct. It's
Well-
moving forward.
Well, that's their
Let me
opinion, but
say
I
this,
want to
right,
hear the
so
attorney's
legally-
opinion.
Legally, there may be somebody that disagrees. I don't necessarily disagree with Ms. Baumiller, but an argument can certainly be made that if an existing, after this ordinance, if it's adopted and a change is made, if a duplex, an existing duplex, which certainly existing duplexes are grandfathered. They're not gonna have to, anyone that's existing isn't gonna have to come before
Right.
us, right?
Right.
But if somebody wants to expand after this ordinance is adopted, an argument can be made that they would have to come before the board because there's a new ordinance requirement in place. It will depend on the nature of the application. So let's just, I hear what Ms. Bauer is saying. I don't necessarily disagree. It will be case and fact sensitive as to whether or not an expansion of existing duplex will or will not need a variance from the land use board.
But is there anything we could do today to address that? Like, I had the same question with if it burns down, and they want to rebuild it, but is there something that we have to address today, or just that's left for a future
That's left for the
interpretation?
future. Let me remind everybody what our role is as the land use board. I've said this before. We don't adopt ordinances. Council does. We are tasked under the municipal land use law, and it's in Mr. Little's review letter, and he says it very well, but under section 26 of the MLUL, and I'm going to read it verbatim. Prior to the adoption of the development regulation revision or amendment thereto, which is what we have before us, the Borough Council seeking to amend the zoning code and the chapter of the code that deals with site plan and a couple other sections. The planning board shall make and transmit to the governing body within 35 days after the referral, a report including identification of any provisions in the proposed regulation, revision, or amendment, which are inconsistent with the master plan. Your board engineer just told you, in his opinion, he doesn't think there's any inconsistency with the master plan. And recommendations concerning inconsistencies and any other matters the board deems appropriate. That's what this board does. You may or may not like the changes. That's not for us to decide. Council makes those policy decisions. This is before us on what's called a section 26 referral for the purposes of doing what I just read and what's in Mr. Little's review letter. So, and again, no, there's nothing we can do with respect to what might happen if some duplex, we'll see, because it will depend on what they want to do to replace a duplex that burns down. I will tell you, if it burns completely down, they're going to have to meet the new ordinance requirement.
I just think, I personally feel that this is being rushed through this section, what is it? Section 2. First of all, I don't see the need for it. If I was a duplex owner and didn't know about this, which I'm quite sure quite a few duplex owners there in town don't know about this, I think they all should be notified that this is happening. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, what if Sandy came through here again? Place is destroyed. Under this, they'd have to build, they'd need 10,000 square feet to build a duplex again. And maybe they use that rent from the second unit to pay for the whole duplex. I personally don't see the need for this. I say leave it alone, leave it at 60 by 100. It's worked so far. I don't think the subdivisions and all the issues that council has are really that dire.
The master plan, when it discusses duplex lots, it's very specific on the size. So
Yeah, I don't see.
would the master
right.
plan have to be amended to conform with this change?
I think the master plan on the duplex lots, I just identified what the zoning is. It doesn't recommend they remain, it doesn't recommend they increase. It just was a review of the zoning in the town and what provisions there are for duplexes, single family, and so forth. So
The
it's
master
written in there, but it didn't technically mean it always remains that way.
The master plan's is specific on the lot size. It
Oh, yeah.
says 60 feet.
No, it reviewed existing zoning. So I
Pardon?
think it reviewed existing zoning. So it just mentions in there that a duplex needs to be on a 60 by 100 lot.
In other words, what Mr. Little's saying is the master plan doesn't recommend one way or the other,
Right.
whether or not the existing zoning requirement should go up or down. It's silent. As
Right.
it just identified what currently exists in the code.
Correct. So I know we're on that thing, but I had one other question. The definition of building is any structure having a roof supported by columns or walls and intended for the shelter, housing, or enclosure of any individual animal, process, equipment, goods, or material of any kind. Then the definition of floor area ratio is representing the gross floor area of all buildings or structures on a lot divided by the total area. So if you have a garage, a shed, or even a garage under 2 floors above, I think that means that all of that gets counted into the floor area ratio. So you can't, if you had a garage underneath a raised ranch, you would be counting both floors of that. Previously, we mentioned that it was habitable area, but both these definitions don't reference back to habitable area. So technically, if you have an unheated garage, an unheated shed, for all those buildings into your floor area ratio. So 50%, you could have 2,500 square feet. That would include your lower garage, which is below base flood, your shed, your garage, any building, according to the definitions. I was a little concerned with that.
Okay,
I read it after I,
Legally, I will tell the board I agree with Mr. Little's interpretation because floor area ratio refers to floor area of all buildings or structures, and you go to the definition of buildings,
right,
and it doesn't make any reference to habitable area.
right.
Well, let me check structure.
Yeah, and structures, I think, but I mean,
Structure, anything constructed or erected with a fixed location on the ground or attached to something having a fixed location on the ground, again, no reference to habitable areas. So whether or not, again, the governing body's made a policy decision to go this way, they have. But I agree with Mr. Little's interpretation. There's nothing tied for floor area ratio now to habitable area.
right,
So a garage would be included
right.
and a shed.
and a shed.
Yeah, and even the space below your upper two floors,
Is
the lower garage area under a house would be counted according.
Right.
So one of my
So that-
suggestions would
go
be
ahead.
that, not sure how we want to handle this, but many boards will send a letter back to the governing body saying they reviewed the ordinance and here are our concerns.
Right.
Was that their intention? Was that a conscious change they made?
It may not have been, I don't know.
No, I mean,
But
these,
I
these
thought this
defin,
just dealt with duplexes.
no.
This is
no,
more, this
no.
is
Yeah.
all the definitions, everything's in here.
Yeah, the governing body and the zoning department have been working through these definitions
Right.
for almost a year now, updating them, going through them. So if you have a specific concern, Frank, you know, you can
Yeah, well,
discuss
I
with
mean,
Phil
again,
and
you're,
put the
you have
concerns
this,
and,
you have this in an ordinance now that went through
Yes.
first reading.
right,
So the board's option is to write a letter to the governing body that we reviewed this and we have a concern about these two definitions now, including all the space in a building, which technically means you're going to build a garage with a raised ranch to meet the floor area ratio, because your lower floor is going to count. Because it doesn't reference habitable area, which is heated space. So I think that's a big concern.
Well,
And I don't know if they caught that. That's all.
I don't, right, because I don't think that might have been one of the definitions that we didn't change every single definition.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just looking at the ordinance as a whole, because the
Right.
whole ordinance is
That might have
going
already
through.
been.
So the other thing that, I mean, when reading these definitions that bothered me is the 18-foot garage and the shed. I don't see the point in allowing somebody to have a detached 18-foot garage and the shed. Why not just put a second story on the shed? I mean, on the garage and ban all sheds. You're taking up more land, putting a shed. And if somebody cannot afford a garage, then they're allowed to have a shed for storage. But once they decide to put a garage in, the shed's gotta go. I just don't see the point in having a shed and a garage on the same lot. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I mean, you can control the height and take it up to 22 or 24 or whatever it takes for a second story to use for storage. But I personally think that's a better idea. So any other discussion? I'd like to make,
Mr. Halpern
oh,
wants to speak.
okay, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Bonnie. My problem with all this, and I understand we're looking at this through the eyes of consistency with the master plan. My problem with all this, since this is first reading, this impacts taxpayers, residents, business owners, people who own that want to rent and may not be able to now afford to rent or offset expenses. I think this is, we're rushing through this in terms of our comments without knowing what the public and especially the real estate industry feels about this.
Hold on, hold on, I don't mean to interrupt. Mr. Halpern, as I explained to the board, that's not our role. This ordinance has been properly introduced by Borough Council. The next part of the process is the consistency review, which is all this board does. We don't introduce the ordinance. We don't adopt the ordinance. We don't have a public hearing on the ordinance. All we do is review for consistency. There are council members who are elected officials, unlike these board members who are appointed. Granted, we have the mayor and Ms. Baumiller, the class 1 and class 3 per the MOUL. But that's not what this board does. We didn't introduce this. Your concerns are understood, of course, but we need to stay focused on what this land use board's role is in terms of the recommendation we make back to the governing body. As Mr. Little indicated, we can certainly write a letter. I can turn that into the resolution that I do and point out what the board's concerns are that have been testified to here tonight. But concerns about impacts on taxpayers and that's for council to do. And at the time of the second reading, it will be open to the public, and anybody and everybody can be heard with respect to those concerns if they have such concerns. And then council can decide if they're going to adopt, whether they're going to table, whether they're going to change it. They'll make those decisions at the time of the second reading of the ordinance. But it's been introduced and it's been properly referred to us. And we're here to do what we're tasked to do, as I read earlier and as spelled out in Mr. Little's letter.
So
All right.
can recommendations on what is grandfathered or not?
No, what's grandfathered or what isn't is it's a matter of law.
Okay.
Okay.
My other comment, Frank, if I could say, I have a question for Frank Little. The definition of impervious coverage includes parking lots, regardless of whether they're using pervious pavers or not. Is that something we can look at?
Well, you can look at it, but that's the definition. That's always been the definition. And I
I
believe.
mean, is that something the land use board could make a recommendation to the governing body?
What do you
to
want to
change?
recommend?
That the parking lot, if they're using pervious pavers, should not be considered impervious.
Yeah, you could recommend that, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, the other part of my question, and Frank's letter says, to maintain the use of planning techniques and zoning regulations that preserve the integrity of existing residential districts. Well, if you take in those duplex districts and make it 100 feet, there is no duplex district because you're going to build single family home.
Well, you'd change it, but it would be in the RB zone. If you change it,
But you're basically eliminating
technically,
duplex.
if you had a duplex and you had if you had 100 by 100 lot, chances are you'd go through 50-foot single family homes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So you eliminated any future duplexes.
Yeah, I don't know, truthfully, I can't recall any new duplexes have been built off the top of my head. None that came before the board. Most of it's going the other way, the single family. But I don't know how
We
many.
have side-by-side duplexes.
Yeah, there might be a
Bill.
couple of them.
Quite a
but,
few.
Yeah. Well, nothing came before us, so it probably conformed and went to the building department.
So you're eliminating a type of housing out of the master plan.
Well, I'm not eliminating it out of the master plan. It's still a permitted use. It's just
Well-
now you need 10,000 square feet,
It's
Which is not
gonna
gonna happen.
which more than likely would mean, you won't have any more duplexes being built.
Just with all due respect to the board, this is already, like, the first reading went through council and there was extensive discussion and none of you were there and we went through like how every single municipality has a very, very similar ordinance, the purpose of it. So it's kind of unfair that you're going back and forth on this when you didn't even listen to the initial first reading at the council meeting.
Jamie, that is incorrect. I was there and since it was first
And
reading, the
there's-
public could not see what the ordinance said.
But they didn't need to. We clearly discussed it.
Well, I think the public. doesn't
Without
need to.
disclosure.
Well, I'm sure, I can't imagine that the borough didn't advertise the ordinance post-introduction as required under the law. So it's available for anybody to see. Anybody can come to Borough Hall and get a copy of it if they like. And it will be subject to a public comment on second reading. Again, personal opinions are not what we're tasked to do here. It's whether or not this ordinance is consistent or inconsistent with the master plan. We can make recommendations back. Now, we act as a board. The vote, the motion and the vote is going to have to be very detailed, because a majority of 9 of you, because remember, we don't count past 9, are going to have to vote in favor of the recommendation with respect to different issues. I kept copious notes. I hope I have them all. But if the majority of you don't think a recommendation with respect to a certain section should be made, then I can't make it. The board acts as a board through its resolution, not through individual members. Now, I could craft a resolution in such a way indicating that certain members have certain recommendations, but that's the recommendation from a member is not a recommendation from the board.
Which may have been inadvertent. They might have changed one definition and not looked at how it affected another definition. We can point
There's
that
no doubt
out.
about it. Absolutely.
Well, how about this? I'm going to make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion that we pass ordinance 2024. What's the number?
Well, we recommend it for
We
adoption.
recommend- right. What's the number?
2024-27C.
27C, with exceptions. And the exceptions will be the floor area ratio and section 2 about the duplexes.
Well, it would be the definition of a building
All right.
and the definition of floor area
As
ratio.
compared to one another, right?
Right, but that deals with the floor area
Right.
ratio. And John had something that he wanted, something about pervious pavers and
Yeah,
parking
you know,
lots.
there is a definition now of pervious hardscape in here, but the impervious coverage definition doesn't say
Doesn't
anything
separate it.
about it.
No,
So it
right.
does say any pavers are considered impervious.
So are you amending the motion, Madam Chair, to include recommendations with the exceptions for the floor area ratio as compared to definition of building, section 2 regarding duplexes, and the impervious lot coverage definition?
Right.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
We just,
There, Rob, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Meadow,
Yes.
Mrs. Ballmiller,
yes,
Mrs. Leonard,
Yes,
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Jenna,
Yes.
Mr. Tinquist,
Yes.
Mr. Balbo,
Yes.
Mr. LaFredo,
Yes.
Miss King,
yes.
Mr. Halperin.
No, only the 9.
No,
sorry.
no.
So the motion carries. I will prepare the resolution with the recommendations / exceptions as articulated in the motion. The motion passes unanimously 9-0. Now, understand, council can still adopt the ordinance. Okay, there's a procedure in the MOU. We need not worry about that. But even if a land use board, even if we were to determine it was inconsistent, which we haven't, the governing body can still adopt it, but they have to spell out the reasons why and explain why they don't agree with the land use board's recommendations. So I just want everybody to be clear. So it's possible that ordinance 2024-27C will be adopted as written, notwithstanding our recommendations. But it will be included in the resolution, which I will send to Gina after the meeting, and it will reflect what happened here this evening. Okay?
Thank you. All right, moving right along to our first application tonight is, you ready? Okay. 2024-C Singer, 1609 South Bay Avenue. Applicant seeking a C variance relief for side yard setback and building coverage to increase the size of an existing deck by approximately 63 square feet to allow for reconfiguration of the stairs so as to encroach upon the adjacent property. So it's to not.
So it's a not.
It's no not here.
Yes,
It's not,
it's to
yeah,
not encroach.
not encroaching the adjacent property.
Ready for me?
Mhm.
Is it working?
Is that
I don't know.
Turn it on.
Let's make sure it is.
it on?
Takes a second.
The side ones work better. I don't know.
The side
little
ones work
sometimes
better
don't
than
work.
the.
Doesn't seem to be doing anything.
Mr.
How about
Tanaka, yeah, if that doesn't work, please make sure that you, your witnesses all speak into the mic. Mr. Brzezowski, I know you know the drill. Good to see you again.
All right, that's working. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Talvaki. I represent Brian and Melissa Singer, the owners of the subject property. We are here seeking variance relief. And this is Mr. Singer, he's going to provide testimony. We also have as
Can you
our,
speak into
Yeah,
that?
Nick, it's hard
mic?
to
You got
pick
it.
it up.
yep, all right.
Sorry.
We're also going to have as our planning and engineering expert, Jim Brzezowski. I'll swear and qualify him later. So I first want to say a couple of things. One, I became aware recently in the last couple of days that I was not as clear as I could have been in the application. Did not mean to imply that the deck expansion was not there because on the plan, it doesn't say proposed, it shows as an existing condition. We need to get it approved. It's never been approved. So that's what I was trying to convey. We needed approval for the 63 square feet. I thought, and there's a pending but notice of violation for building it without a permit. We're going to talk all about that tonight by Mr. Singer's testimony. So I just wanted to clear up that there was no intent to mislead anybody, that the condition's there, the plan is clear, but my language should have said something to the effect to legalize the existing condition. So I personally apologize for that, and that was my fault. So having said that, I want to just go through a little bit of background. There was an existing set of steps. In order for Mr. and Mrs. Singer to access the rear of their property, the steps, the old steps, were so close to the property of our neighbor that effectively for Mr. Singer to walk to the rear of their property, they had to walk onto the property of the neighbor. There just wasn't enough room. And if you look at the survey, you really can't go around the other way either because there's only a little more than a foot setback on the back of the property. So to access the back side of his property, and we'll show that graphically, he needed to walk around the steps. So Mr. Singer and Mrs. Singer did not want to do that. The expansion of the deck, 63 feet, allowed them to reorient the stairs so that it went from being a southerly property line to the westerly side. And that then allows him to walk or them to walk under the deck to get to the rear. He then enclosed it because the neighbor tenants, Mr. Singer would store kayaks, bikes, whatever, surfboards on the side there. They would kind of borrow it, the neighbors. They didn't steal it, but they borrowed it, thinking that it was part of the rental of the neighbor. So he enclosed it. Now, should have got permits for that? Yes, and we'll talk about that. So what we're here today for is to request that the current condition remain, except for the fact that we understand, we believe there's a small encroachment of our existing structure on their property, although the surveys are somewhat inconsistent, but we are proposing to pull back the porch and the enclosure so we're off the property. We're not going to come obviously close to the 5-foot setback, but the upstairs studio only has one really way to get in, and that's the way it's been configured. There's no internal staircase. It's a separate unit. You can't enter from another location because of the way the building's designed without a major expansion of the building. So the approach that Mr. and Mrs. Singer are proposing, we think, is the best solution given the current and longstanding conditions of the property. It's non-conforming. There's a lot of non-conforming properties in terms of setbacks. It allows for safe access to the second floor, not only by whoever's occupying the second floor, the studio, but in the event, God forbid, of an emergency. If first responders have to go up the stairs, you have to have sufficient width And Mr. Singer will talk about that. He is a retired New York City firefighter with 30 years experience. He's going to be able to talk about those kind of need for access. And so we think our design accomplishes a lot. Now, I know there's an objector, a neighbor next door. She doesn't like the fact that we enclosed it, but we think there's good reason for that. And by code, we could put a 5-foot fence with 1-foot lattice, 50% open, 50% closed, 6 foot. That open area is only 8 feet. So we're talking really about 2 feet. And Mr. Singer puts storage in there, bikes, surfboards. We think our solution is the better solution in terms of keeping it kind of the storage away from the visual impact to the neighbors, but we'll talk about that. So enough for me. I'd like to have Mr. Singer talk about this and how he got to the place where he is today, if I may.
Mr. Singer, could you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear from the testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Brian? Yes. For the record, I'm just going to let you, because you've gone through this, and I know we have to share exhibits with the opposition here. And then I want you to walk the board through what you've done.
Wait, Mr. Singer, you're gonna have to talk into the mic because this whole thing is being recorded, and especially because there's an objector here, so there's gonna be a transcript in case there's some subsequent proceeding.
Okay.
Depending on what the board does.
Yes, just going to hand out the pictures.
Brian, for the record, you took these photos?
Yes, my wife took the photos. We did not go on to the southern end of the property. There's been an ongoing issue with going on to each other's property since this occurred. So I'll give you the history. 2013, came down to look at buying a property in Beach Haven. Went and found a few properties. This one was of interest. We're looking for a small place my wife and I could live in and use the other place for family and friends. So we found a bunch of them. Long story short, 2013, we were able to go to contract on this property. Billy Greer was the building inspector. He became a very good friend because I worked with his nephew, Bobby Greer, in the fire department for 30 years. So he able to help me out with this property to make sure we get it and move forward. Short contract 2013, did not close until 2018. 2 weeks before closing, the party that I was buying it from passed away. Took them 5 years to probate and fight each other in court. 2018, summer of 2018, we bought the property. Not in a very good shape, all overgrown. Literally the table, the plates and everything inside the houses were sitting on the table since Sandy. Sand on the floor, nothing was touched since that point. So totally overgrown. So in Billy Greer's comments about the property, it said that I need to repair the deck in the rear because of the decking was bad and the handrails were bad that needed to be repaired. Discussed with him at that point that what my plans were, because as you see, there was trees. I had to go around those trees to gain access to my property to move the stairs to the other side. I was under misunderstanding. I thought what I then built was what I could do as a repair because the whole framework from the old deck is there. I didn't touch a post. The joists are all there. The only thing I did is took down those stairs and extended it and moved the stairs. So now I no longer have to go on my neighbor's property. 2019, had some issues with the neighbor's rear tenants. She rents the place, which I have every right to, front and rear house. That was my storage area during the summer. So 3 or 4 times that summer, I had a couple surfboards, chairs. We are so close back there, and where my seating area is, those tenants would use my stuff. They weren't stealing it. 2 times I had to go down the beach and get my surfboards and bring them back. So finally could start a construction around 2021, May of 2021. Like I said, I thought it was repair. Did all the work myself. You'll see everything in there from cutting those trees down. Those trees were required to have, I had to remove them because the insurance, they started on my property and went across the southerly neighbor's house. Insurance said I had to remove them to keep my insurance. So the trees came and I built what was there in terms of the
Brian, those trees are your property, right?
trees are on my property. The only vegetation you can see was there. The only thing I disturbed, I took down those 3 trees. Changed the angle of the stairs, so now I can go underneath and closed in my belongings. At that point in 2021, it stopped. Got a violation, which understood, I needed to get a permit for it. Subsequently, with that permit, they said that that 2-family structure, they had an issue. They thought that it was not a 2-family structure. Since 1950, that was built. I live in a 1925 bungalow. 1950 was there, has always been a 2-family, 2 bedrooms, studio.
Plus the single family in front.
The single family in front. Nothing's changed on it. Hired Nick and quite some money went before.
Yeah, some of you may remember that we came before the board. It was a Zoom meeting during COVID. Jamie, you were there at the time, I remember. And the board voted unanimously to determine that the 3 dwelling units, the duplex and the single, were a pre-existing non-conforming use. So I did that in 21, I guess, right? And then
22.
was it 20? Okay, 22. Yeah, so we appealed the zoning officer's determination and the board reversed. That's what's attached to this submission I made, that resolution. So take it from there.
So,
yes.
Let me interrupt. Mr. Tubman, that's a good point. Just so the board understands, that prior resolution is included in the application,
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
And
it
the
is.
photos, there are 7 photos. Are you marking them?
Yeah, we'd like to, there are photos of, and Brian can walk you through each of them if you'd like. I mean, they may be self-explanatory.
1 through 7.
1 through 7.
Resolution A1.
Yeah, Brian, we can call them Brian Singer photos.
so you want me to walk through the photos?
Briefly.
Yeah, just first one is, you'll see the 3 trees all starting on my property underneath the steps. Took them down, removed them. Then number 2, you'll see the location of the steps going up. You'll see the posts in the back. There's 6x6 posts. That deck was built in
So
1982.
Brian, let me stop you. When you're looking at, that's photo 2, correct?
Yes,
To the right side, there are the steps as they were located.
yes,
The neighbor's property is immediately to the right of that.
yes,
For you to get behind the stairs to get to access the rear of your property, you would have to walk on the neighbor's property.
yes.
Okay.
So number 2 shows where and those existing posts are still there. Kept that exact framework that went around, put plywood on it and fiberglass over top of that. I did change the area where the steps are straight above to make it so I can go north to south instead of east to west.
So essentially, by relocating the stairs and extending the deck, you can now walk under the deck to get to the rear of your property. You don't need to go
Yes.
on the neighbor's property anymore.
So number 3 is similar. Number 4 is just showing down from the top. The old deck, you'll see the railing and the condition of it was not quality at that point after being there for 40 years. So number 5, this is when I built the area. At this point, this was done in June of 2021. I have not touched anything since. That's where it stayed. This endeavor's cost me roughly $30,000. It cost me $4,700 to build this stuff, $30,000 for the engineers, lawyers, surveyors over the past 3 years. So delay is purely financial. 6 is the steps that I built going up from that side. And number 7 is the top railing, and you'll see about halfway down, that's the entrance to that studio on the 2-family.
And Brian, you've also renovated the units, the interior, you've cleaned up, you've,
Just cleaned up the
Painted up.
inside and, they're nice old beach bungalows and old pine siding and kept it that way. And
you've cleaned up all the landscaping and the overgrown and
since 21, I haven't done anything since, but
you
at that
maintain.
point was the stop. I haven't touched another part of the property until I get this matter resolved.
So Brian, obviously, to the extent and the survey shows that the deck is over the property line, you're willing to relocate that, right?
Well, yeah, I am, but her survey shows that it's not over the property line. Mine shows a little bit over the property line. So to not argue it, I'm willing to move it back a little bit to keep it off the property line.
Yeah, and we
Mr.
understand.
Delvecchio, just if I may, so as a condition of approval, if the board were to grant this application, your client will agree, if it turns out that it's over the property line, to take it back.
Yeah, we showed on our plan to take it back at least
6 inches.
6 inches. Actually, I think
Yes.
we showed 2 inches in our plan, in our.
Well, no, it was
proposal,
6 inches total because it says 3 inches over. So I proposed to go 6 inches back. So we're off the property line.
Because
Okay.
obviously the board can't grant.
but-
it.
No, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
as a condition of approval, if granted, the deck will be taken back 6 inches.
Correct. And I just want to point out, we were provided a 2013 survey that shows it's not over. I understand they got a new survey that shows it's over, and I believe our survey shows it's over by a couple of inches. So to the extent that there's and I'm sure the surveyors can come to some agreement, but we would be fine if Mr. Little were the arbiter of where the property line is. I'm willing to agree to that. My client is, because somebody's going to make a decision what survey is correct. We're only talking inches here, literally a few inches, but at some point, somebody say, this is what's correct. And I don't know that the board wants to get into that kind of decision-making.
The board doesn't have that authority.
Okay, but we would, for purposes of abiding by that condition, if the board approves this, have Mr. Little say, this is the line, this is where you have to be. But it's probably about 6 inches. is what
So
we're
6
thinking.
inches is the reason for that is there's a 5.5 inch post there. And I can take it and what's called marry that post next to it, right behind it to support it, and then remove that one. So I can take out that post by putting another post right behind it, remove that post so I can still keep the structural integrity of the deck above. That's why I was said to move it back 6 inches. Then the neighbor will show you. I didn't go on in there, take pictures. She'll have pictures of it. I'm willing to do whatever's along that wall. There's one window. I could add other windows. It's not a structural, it's meant for storage. Can paint it, I needed to finish trimming it, make panels, have it look nice, but that's been stopped. It's just painted white and it's been that way for 3.5
So
years.
You're agreeable to aesthetic treatment of that wall if the board will approve it, and including adding windows to kind of
Yeah,
give it an open look.
I'll put plantings in front of it. I'll do whatever she wants to. You won't have to see it if that's what she wants.
So from great, you have a question?
Just for clarification purposes, can you show on that plot plan where it's over the property line? I'm not sure.
Jim, if you want, Jim will do it.
Let's.
Yeah, that's going to qualify.
Mr. Rozowski, you swear to testify to give before the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Mr. Delvecchio.
You're a New Jersey licensed engineer and planner.
Yeah, for the record, my name is James Brzezowski. I'm a licensed professional engineer and professional planner in the state of New Jersey and an employee at Horn Tyson and Yoder since 1997.
You've been qualified by this board in the past as an expert in those professions, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I offer Mr. Brzezowski as an expert, sorry, as a,
Madam Chair.
you're supposed to, Madam Chair.
Yes, we've seen it many times.
Yes, thank you. So Mr. Brzezowski,
Thank you.
I didn't know that. I just,
The area that we're talking about is in the southeast corner of of our subject property. We've got a 2-story or 1.5-story duplex located on the east side of the property. To the south of the duplex is a roughly 5-foot wide deck that provides access to the duplex, to the second floor unit. The second floor unit is accessed by a door that faces south. So to get into the unit, you come up the steps, turn left, go about to the middle of the building, and then open the door and go to the north of the property.
and Jim, this is the variance plan we submitted that's being displayed?
Yes.
Okay. To the upper right is the original condition. Can you show where the steps were before?
When my office surveyed the property in 2016, the steps, the deck extended to just a little bit to the west of the midpoint of the structure, and the stairs started from that point heading west.
And Jim, would it be possible to get to the rear of the property and that the original condition without going onto the neighbor's property?
No, these steps prevent you from getting underneath the deck in this configuration. The east side of the building is also about a foot off the property line.
It jogs though, so underneath it's set back under the deck, and then it jogs as you go,
But you can't get to the jog
right, from the other direction.
because that portion, the northern portion of the building is enclosed all the way, has always been enclosed all the way to the ground. Because the one-story unit exists on that.
Right, and so you can't access it from the other direction. It's,
No.
right, you have to access it from where the stairs are. So the idea of relocating the stairs is to allow access under the deck
Yeah.
and to avoid the neighbor's property.
With this configuration, you just walk due east along the southern property line and get underneath the deck area.
And
And the encroachment is like just the full length of the deck is about, based on our survey, 2/10 of a foot south of the southerly property.
and what 2/10 inches is approximately 2.5 inches?
About 2 inches, yeah.
2 inches. And so just show again where the photos, what we'll call the storage area under the deck, just show the line of that.
The enclosed area is just the shaded area under the deck. That's the area that's enclosed under the deck on the existing condition survey.
So from the underside of the deck to grade, how many feet is that?
From the underside of the deck to grade is a little over 8 feet, just a little short of 9 feet.
Okay, so the code would allow the installation of a 5-foot fence with a 1-foot lattice, half open, half open and closed, right? So
Right, a
6 foot.
5-foot solid fence with 1 foot of 50% open fence above it.
So
A total
6
of
foot.
6 foot.
So the difference between what we have and what's permitted is 2 feet, correct?
Yeah, 2 feet,
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Brzezowski? If not, I'll go back to Mr. Singer.
I only have one question. Do we know how far the neighbor thinks you're over versus how far you think you're over?
Well, depending on what survey they have, their old survey shows that we're not over from 2013 when the neighbor bought the property. Apparently, they got a new survey done that shows we're over. I don't know exactly, but I think we're within inches either way.
But does the neighbor then have another survey that shows you might be over further?
Yes, they just got a new one done.
So I assume we'll hear from
Yeah.
them as to how.
Yeah,
far
she's
over
going to come up.
They
Yeah,
think you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
So you're saying we have 2 surveys?
3.
Three.
Our survey shows we're over. They have a survey from 2013 that shows we're not over, although it's a third of an inch.
And then what's the third?
They had a new one done. They got a new survey that shows that we're over.
So you have
We-
2 that show you're over and 1 that doesn't.
One is ours and one is theirs and one is theirs that shows we're not over. That's why I suggest that Mr. Little be the arbiter of what's in fact over.
I'm gonna split it in half.
Yeah,
I'll have to see how much they think they're over.
I have questions when the presentation's done. But I'll
I
make
just
some-
want to mention just one other thing. In order to get the steps to obviously go along the west wall of the building, the deck had to be extended to the west in order to get the steps to come along the west wall. With the reduction of the 1/2 foot along the entire length of the deck, we're going to increase building coverage by 49 square feet, which increases the non-conformity from 36.2% to 37.2%.
Reduce building coverage, you mean,
We're increasing building coverage.
by pulling it back?
We're not. Difference between 2016 and today is an
Right.
increase of 40. will
I got you.
ultimately be an increase of 49.
But per Mr. Singer's discussion years ago, if he removed 84 square feet
Well,
of concrete.
Can- Nick, let me.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
So in my sitting down with Billy Greer, there was a front porch on the 1925 bungalow. There's a concrete 1 foot high, actually 18 inches high slab that was there that had the blue, green, purple flagstone that they used to use. So I expressed that I'm going to remove that 84 square feet, and in our discussions about the back deck, me increasing it, he felt the impervious, that as long as I stayed below the impervious amount that I was doing. So taking 84 square feet off, adding 62 at the time. Now we're proposing to take another 14 square feet off the side. If I take 6 inches off the 32 feet. So now we're down to roughly 43 square feet that I added. But in this whole process, I removed impervious, the front patio, which you'll see on the first survey. And it's mentioned in the plan that Jim put together.
Ryan, do you have anything further you want to add at this point?
No, like I said, on that wall, she'll show you the pictures. I'm willing to put windows, trim it out. Like I said, it stopped at that point 3 years ago. Put plantings, anything to be able to keep my space and secure my space that she rents her place front and rear year round. I'm now a permanent resident in the bungalow. And since I put this wall up, nothing's been borrowed from my space.
Thank you. Obviously, Mr. Singh will be available for any questions. I'd like to have Mr. Brzezowski go through the planning testimony at this point. Jim. So Jim, this is a classic hardship variance, I would argue.
Yeah, we have a legally existing structure that has some existing nonconformities. Yes.
And you could not gain access to the rear of property with the old configuration. Is that accurate?
That is accurate.
So from a just a standard planning perspective, boards can't grant approval and we can't access adjoining property without permission, correct?
Yes.
So does the revised design, moving the steps, allow for access to the rear of the property without the need to encroach upon the neighbor's property?
It does, yes.
And is that a benefit in terms of good design?
Yeah, it allows the maintenance of the building.
And the upstairs is a studio. There's no internal access, right?
That's right.
And you looked at, because I asked you to, can you put the steps like on the front of the unit, like facing toward bay? And you said, well, if you look at the design, the studio is toward the rear of the current structure. You'd have to do a major redesign, really an expansion. It's not economically feasible, not practical. Is that accurate from your?
Yes. In order to come up with an alternate access, you may need to remove the roof of the one-story apartment, because the second floor apartment only extends for the southern half of that building. The northern half of the building is just a one-story building. So in order to provide steps somewhere else, you may have to alter roof lines, build a new deck above the existing one-story building. It starts getting into a lot of work.
Okay, so, and there's 3 approved living dwelling units there. Based upon your observations, is storage necessary for such things as surfboards and other kinds of beach activities and summer activities?
Yes.
Is that area under the porch a good location for it in terms of the overall design?
It is, yes.
So if the board chooses not to approve the setback for the enclosure, because that's a setback issue, you're allowed to enclose a storage area, but we obviously don't meet the setback. The alternative is to kind of put a fence to secure it, which you said would be 8 foot with the 50% open and 50% closed. Is that correct?
The total height of the fence, 5 foot solids, plus 1 foot of 50% open.
So what would be the difference between the fence height and the bottom of the deck?
Roughly 2 feet.
And that's it. So is there a benefit to that versus what is there today?
No, I would think that it's the opposite. I would think that from an aesthetic standpoint, the solid wall is going to have better aesthetics than a fence leaving a 2 foot gap that you're able to see whatever's being stored under the deck through. I can't see that. I can't imagine that being a better plan than providing a solid wall.
And would that 2 foot gap improve air, light, and open space, which is a purpose of zoning?
No.
Why?
Because first of all, the deck is, as we mentioned, is about 9 feet above the ground.
the bottom of the deck.
Yeah, and and that's it for the structure adjacent to that property line. It's just a one-story deck that's enclosed below. So the wall we're looking at is 8 foot plus the 1 foot of decking. So the wall we're looking at is about 9 foot right now. The light that we're getting during the daytime is coming around the southern side of the building, not from the northern side. So the sunlight is coming from the south. This building doesn't block any sunlight. So, yeah, and leaving a 2 foot gap above a fence isn't going to increase any light, air and open space for anybody.
Okay, so you think aesthetically it's better for storage area to be enclosed as the current condition is?
I think so, yes.
And it also provides security for personal property.
Yes,
And Mr. Singer, you heard him testify, he couldn't finish the exterior, but he's willing to paint it. He'll do any color actually that the neighbor would like. He'll finish the trim work. He can even add additional windows to kind of give it a more residential feel to it, but easy to do. By the way, he is a former cabinet maker. In addition to being a firefighter, he's very good at his, I walk through the house. He's very good at trim work and that kind of stuff. And of course, if the board were to approve this, we'd have to go get a building permit. The building department would be satisfied that the work being done is in compliance with all codes. It's not a board issue, but obviously that would have to be done, correct?
yes,
And I know the client is offered, if the neighbor were willing, he'd even put a row of landscaping. It has to be, of course, on the neighbor's property, but adjacent to the storage area to kind of soften it if that's, but we couldn't, there's no room in our property to do it, but we would pay for it adjacent to that area, again, to mitigate what the neighbor perceives as an issue. But the reality is there's going to be some kind of barrier to protect the personal property of our client because of his experiences with the tenants, kind of, again, not trying to steal, but helping themselves to those surfboards and whatever else he stores out there. So he's going to secure it one way or the other. The question is, what's the better design? And so is that all accurate?
yeah, absolutely.
And then there's a number of code issues, which I don't want to get into in terms of proximity to a property line and fire codes and all that. It's not really a board issue, but I can have Mr. Singer, who has 30 years experience as a New York City firefighter, talk about whether he thinks that the enclosed, in fact, I will bring him up. The enclosed storage is better from a fire safety standpoint than having a fence in an open area. So I want you to stand by for a second. Mr. Singer, I'd like you to talk about that. And again, for the record, you recently retired
Yes.
on disability after 30 years as a
Injured
firefighter, correct?
last year. Yep, broke my neck at a fire. So,
So what we discussed.
if you close it.
Yeah.
And close this space below, the neighbor had an issue saying that fire is gonna come out. If I left it open, there'd be a fire. I mean, if I close it, there's a fire issue with extension over to her property. This was a comment that I heard. It's the exact opposite. If it's enclosed, it's getting no air. If anything's burning in there, it needs oxygen. So if it's enclosed, there is no, you have a much more quicker time. I mean, it will not burn in a quick amount of time if it's enclosed. If it's open air and just getting oxygen, fire needs oxygen. And so you have a much greater chance of it coming out of that area if it's not enclosed. So there was a comment that could be a fire issue with me enclosing that. And I think it's the exact opposite.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Mr. Brzezowski, based upon that testimony, is another purpose of zoning, so you talked about light, air, and open space. Is another purpose of zoning is to provide for the public safety, to make sure we have good design?
Yes, to provide safety from fire and flood, yes.
Yeah. So is the proposed enclosed storage area a better planning alternative, in your opinion, under the C2 criteria than the open area with a fence next to it?
Yes,
Okay. So you talked about the justification, this hardship. It's hardship because there's no practical way to get upstairs unless you, without encroaching, unless you have this reconfiguration. Is that accurate?
yes,
And that's a condition unique to this property
It is, yes.
because the pre-existing condition of the building, which has been there for decades, at least 40 years from what we can tell, that's been there, and that the board did determine that that upstairs unit is a standalone unit. There's no internal connection, correct, between the units?
That's correct, yes.
So no practical way to access it other than the design that we came with. Is that accurate?
Yes.
In your opinion, does that create a hardship under the municipal land use law of a unique conditional property?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Then there's aesthetics. You talked about how you believe that, one, there's no that's the next part, that the wall, which any decorative treatment that the board wishes, whether it's paint, additional windows, trim, would be better than a fence with a 2-foot gap above it,
Yes,
from an aesthetic standpoint.
yes, I believe so, yes.
Better planning alternative than what's permitted.
Yes.
And having said those things, do you think, so to justify any variance, you have to show that there's no substantial detriment to the zone plan or public good? This obviously doesn't apply with the zone plan, but it really can't, given that it's grandfathered and it's so, it's a prior non-conforming structure, correct?
Yes.
But in the context of what is feasible, does this achieve the goals of the municipal land use ordinance in terms of providing safe access to the second floor, or the studio unit, I should say?
It does.
And it's safer for, God forbid, there's an emergency, first responders, somebody needs medical help and they have to be evacuated out, and come up and down the steps?
Yeah, even with the removal of the 6 inches of deck that we're proposing, there will be 48 inches clear from the exterior wall of the building to the inside of the railing. So.
And is that adequate space for first responders?
It is, yes.
And then there's also the practical, which is just, you want to move a refrigerator into that unit. You want to move furniture into that unit. There has to be a way of getting that into the unit, correct?
Yes.
So to make it functional, you need stairs, you need a walkway, you need porch. Okay. So the other part is whether or not there's a substantial detriment to the public good. Do you see a substantial detriment to the public good under the circumstances?
No, I don't see any detriment to the public good. The building is in the southeast corner of a property that fronts on Long Beach Boulevard.
The general public can't even see back there.
That's right.
And again, you've testified that the proposed plan to enclose the storage is actually a better design alternative aesthetically than a fence with a 2-foot gap.
Yes.
Okay. Anything further?
No.
So as a planner, do you believe the board has the legal authority to grant the variance relief requested today,
Yes, I do.
in your professional opinion?
Yes.
All right.
So Novak, if I may,
Yes.
Mr. Brzezowski, you've had the opportunity to review Mr. Little's review letter dated August 28, 2024.
Yes, I have.
If the board were to grant this application as a condition of approval, your client will comply with all of the comments and recommendations contained in Mr. Little's report.
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
Can I ask a question?
Fire away.
I don't know if I misheard you. Did you say that you believe that there's more air, light, and open space with the enclosed versus just the fence?
No, I simply said keeping it enclosed isn't going to, enclosing it isn't going to negatively affect the light, air, and open space because of the width of the enclosure, where the enclosure is, that it's on the south side of a building, that it's only a 4 or 5 foot enclosed area.
And
So
and the way the sun rises and sets.
Right.
And the only space that would remain open after a fence was put in is 2 feet between the top of the fence and the bottom of the decking. So I don't see that as significantly increasing light, air, or decreasing, whichever way you want to look at it. Putting up a solid wall doesn't
But it's-
significantly decrease
'cause
the light,
it's-
air, and open space.
Right, but if you, I mean, you're showing, sometimes when you use the air, light, and open space, it just doesn't really make sense to me, because if I look at this picture, that's completely closed. If I look at this
So for the
picture,
record, just for the record, so picture 5, it's closed, that's as it exists.
and then when I look at picture 3, I can look straight through.
But
That's the same
That,
thing.
that is from our side. That's not from the neighbor's side. That is from looking from our single family toward the back. In other words, your back is toward Bay Avenue there.
Your,
That's our view.
the photo that shows the prior condition, the
This
open
is the
condition.
prior-
Yeah,
That's op-
that-
Photo three
yeah,
is
photo three,
completely open.
which doesn't show a fence. So once you put a solid 5-foot solid fence with a 1-foot, 50%
Okay.
open lattice on top, that's going to, make that a different view. You're going to look at something different with that.
There's no fence there currently.
There's no
Correct.
fence there
There's no
currently.
fence at all.
No.
So
They're saying that's.
But also that's,
that's
that,
an option.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question on photo one. This window here, what's behind here? What room is that?
Brian,
That's the kitchen area.
Okay. It's just questioning that. I guess I have a lot of questions. What's actually stored in the shed right now?
the microphone, please.
Show my phone, the surfboards, beach chairs. The remaining construction materials that I would use to finish what I started are sitting there. I don't know if you can put that in.
Well, I don't know that we can,
I can show you what's.
Okay.
stored.
yeah, I don't know how we put that into the record.
Do that For the record, you
Yeah,
can testify.
you can testify.
By the,
As to what's
You could
there.
see
They-
inside that the
they-
existing deck.
We
was
can't
there.
show that, Brian.
Okay, sorry.
Just testify.
okay, because one of the other things I noticed, looking at the property, there was 3 parking spaces in the rear access.
Yes, coming down that side.
Right. There
So,
seems to be bike racks. in
Yep.
that. They're in the parking areas,
yes, so
so they're
Uh,
not parking, which is required
on which side you're talking?
on the
The-
east side.
So as
On
we
the
head
alley.
east,
Yeah.
yes, I put them, but I'm moving to the back. You'll see a bike rack on there. But those bike racks, I take them and put them inside throughout the winter.
Oh, I'm-
But I do store 2 cars up to that.
You're supposed to have 3, I think, there, according, when we looked at the approval, I guess, back in 21 or 22.
Yes, I bring 2 cars in up to that
Okay.
point.
All I'm saying is the bike racks are in your parking
Okay,
areas.
I can,
As a comment.
We can remove that.
they're
You
not,
agree to that? It's a condition of approval?
Yes.
yeah, they're not permanent bike racks. They're just, a metal piece. They're not into the ground. I can move them anywhere.
Okay.
No issue with moving
Well, I
bike
have a
racks.
question. If this drawing shows three cars and then some vacant space, you can move the bike racks up closer to the
Um,
areas or no? You have a little table there, I think.
As you come up into that area, the 3 cars would then give me 8 feet, so not technically room for another car, so that it was stopped at that point because as you come off Iroquois and come in, the town knows so much of it, and then the 3 cars after gives me about 8 feet, so I was able to get to 4 cars, so I can put stuff in that other area up front there,
Okay, thank you.
including a bike rack and yeah.
And I guess the part I didn't understand, you're saying by enclosing the space, you have access to the rear?
No, the enclosing, by moving the stairs and putting the stairs in the configuration then allows you to walk under the deck to the rear. That's a different issue than the enclosure.
So but when you put the enclosure on the property line, how do you maintain the siding or the outside of that structure that you just put in there? When the steps were in there, you could maintain your structure. Now you can't.
It's always an issue when properties are very close. For example, the neighbor's about a foot away, her entry from our property. What neighbors generally do is they ask permission to maintain, and that's,
Do you
know,
have
that's how.
such an easement? to
Say again?
maintain? Do you have an easement to
No, we-
maintain that
no,
siding? So
we'd like,
I don't see how you can put a solid structure on the property line or over the property line, wherever it may
well,
be.
we're not, it won't be over the property line.
Okay.
It will be pulled back. It's challenge, but it's,
It's not doable without an easement.
well, we've asked them, we
So
offered to
by
give them.
doing, right now, before you did it, you could. Now you can't.
Can I put a fence there?
Pardon?
Can I put a fence where that wall is?
Yes, you
You can
on
put
the
a fence on
property
the
line.
property line.
Yeah,
And so,
And you're gonna build a fence from your side of the property line, but,
yeah.
but you can't, and you can maintain a fence from your side of the property
okay,
line, but not a structural, not a wall.
Well, let me ask you, Brian, you're a carpenter. Could you maintain that somehow from the interior, or would you need exterior access?
no, you cannot maintain it from the interior. It's like any, but there's, you cannot maintain it from the interior.
So, and I'll go, I'm getting to my basic issue, and that's the expansion of a non-conforming use. By enclosing this thing, it looked like we made a substantial improvement to a deck area. That's an expansion of the non-conforming use. I don't think that should be done. I think we should look at or you should look at how you correct your situation, and we can help with that. But this is an expansion of the building. Period.
If I put a fence there,
The fence is fine. You can put a fence there. That ordinance allows you to do that.
how do I maintain my property with where the stairs existed? How do I get there to maintain
How are
my
you gonna
property?
maintain it with a solid wall on the property line? How are you gonna maintain that siding? You can't without an easement.
Without an easement.
And that's the same thing as if you have your stairs there,
I'm still gonna need an easement. if I
or
put
you
the
have to
stairs
dismantle your stairs to maintain it, to maintain the property.
there. If I go back to where the stairs were, I'm still gonna need an easement to go around those stairs. to
No,
get
you-
No,
on-
it's two different issues,
Not
I think.
necessarily.
Hold on, one at a time, we have to make a clean record.
Yeah, Mr. Stevens, I think there's two different issues. One is the expansion of the deck and the relocation of stairs. The second issue is whether that space is enclosed. I think that's what we're saying. From my perspective, they're unrelated, well, they're not unrelated, but they're two different issues.
Well, by enclosing it, you're expanding space
I hear that.
and, okay,
But if we don't relocate the stairs with the deck expansion of 63 feet, we cannot access the rear of our property without going on the neighbor's property. It's impossible.
I still don't follow that.
Okay,
Well, then-
can we go?
Then you need to reconfigure your stairs in such a way that you can.
Well, that's what we did.
That's what I did.
I don't agree with that. You enclosed the space.
But I'm willing to take down that wall. That's not something that,
I just want, Jim, could you hold this forward? I'm going to show something.
I'm willing to remove that wall. It stopped at that.
So
I don't need the wall. If I put a fence there,
this is
Then I'm
the
blocking-
plan.
Hold on, Mr. Belecki, you and your client are talking.
Yeah,
at
let
the
me
same
talk,
time.
Brian.
Slow down.
This is the original configuration. Here's the stairs that used to exist. Here's the property line of the neighbor. The stairs prevented access to the rear of the property under the deck. So he had to walk onto the neighbor's property to get to the rear. The new configuration, by extending the deck 63 feet and putting the stairs in front of our structure, you can walk under. Now, enclosing it is a different issue. It could be left open, and Brian just said he would leave it open. But this is the reconfiguration we propose to avoid having to go on the neighbor's property. So you can walk under this. So could he remove the siding? Sure. The board doesn't approve that. It gets approved, so you would see under to the wall of the house. But this is the only reconfiguration. This is the entrance to the second floor. It's the only entrance. The unit's built back. There's no practical way to get there. There's no internal connection. So we think that the stair reconfiguration works. It avoids us encroaching on the neighbor's property.
Mr. Telvecchia, I'm going to ask you, and if it's okay with the board chair, we're going to take a break. I want you to speak to your client because Mr. Stevens raises a good point. If in fact that enclosure makes this an expansion, a non-conforming use, that's not been applied for, we don't have jurisdiction, you would have to renotice. And it presents a different situation because as you know, this board would have to reconstitute as a zoning board. Right, an expansion of a non-conforming use is a D variance.
Yeah.
Okay, which means that the class one, although the mayor's not here, and Ms. Baumiller, my class three member, wouldn't be hearing this application. Now, I understand your client has indicated that he might be willing to take down the enclosure and put up a fence. I'm gonna ask that we take a break and speak to your client. We need
Yeah.
to know which way you're going.
Okay.
Pause, and he needs to make a decision, because it's not up to the board to tell your client which way to go.
Understood.
Right? But if he decides to try to go with the enclosure, I think I have no choice but to recommend that they perhaps, and it's up to you, that this application be withdrawn and then you submit a new application for a D variance, and then we'll hear that as a zoning, a reconstituted zoning. He doesn't have to, it's entirely up to Mr. Singer,
All right,
but he can't leave it up to the board. We don't tell applicants which way to go.
understood.
He has to make that decision.
All right,
So,
we'll
if it's
talk.
okay, we'll take a break.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. To open to the public discussion of ordinance 2024-27C.
Yes. So for the
Motion
record,
to open to public.
thank you, Mr. Jen. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
For the record, board, as you know, we discussed the section 26 referral of the ordinance. There was a motion, it was seconded, it was approved 9-0. We do under the municipal land use law have to open that matter to the public, so that's what we're doing right now while the Singer application is being discussed. So the matter's been open to the public. Is there any, go ahead.
So if anyone would like to come up and speak to ordinance 24-27C? You have any ideas about duplexes, garages, floor area ratio? You're allowed to- None of the above. Is there anybody on Zoom? No? Okay, can I have a motion to close it to the public?
Motion to close, Tom.
Second?
Second, Cherry.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So that matter's taken care of. Mr. Telvecchia, you ready?
Rock and roll. Come on, guys. Oh, no, 1:30.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience, appreciate it. So I've been talking to the neighbor's attorney. So we want to amend the application to completely remove the enclosure, completely. And we would agree to pull the post back 1 foot off the property line. Their new survey shows us about 6 inches of one part overhang. Ours shows it at like 2.5, 3 inches. So we have a very slight disagreement in the two surveys, which I think our arbiter could resolve. But the point is, what we're proposing is to be based upon wherever the property line ends up being. We would pull the deck itself back 4 inches off the property line, the post below 1 foot. 1 foot. That would give adequate room for the steps to go up, to access, to get in and out for safety, moving appliances, and as I said, safety. Would avoid us having to go on her property. We could access our rear, and we can remove some of the concrete under the deck. I'll let them speak for themselves. I think they want it all removed. I think that's too much. We do plan to get a permit to build a fence at a later date. They're not going to see the concrete with the fence that's under the deck area. So that's where we are. Deidre, I don't know if you have anything to add at this point.
Mr. Telvecchia, could you just bring your client up?
Yeah.
to Testify and affirm that everything that you just said was accurate and agreed to by Mr. Singer?
Brian, you heard what I said.
Yes.
4 inches off the property line for the deck itself.
The deck
The
itself,
post back 1 foot off the property line.
Yes.
And can you remove some of the concrete under the,
Yeah, I'll remove the concrete along where those posts are. Cut
okay,
it there. There was a bluestone, the old shale, purple, blue, green that went around that back. That's sitting right underneath that concrete,
okay.
right over top of it.
And do we have approximation of what that impervious coverage reduction would be, Mr. Brzezowski? If he removes that concrete?
It's 30, gonna be 32 feet.
It's all under the existing deck and structure, so
32
it's
feet.
not going to affect it, but it's covered by.
But it'll affect drainage and those kind of things, right?
It could help.
Yeah, okay. So,
And most importantly, Mr. Singer, you will remove the entire enclosure?
Yes, yeah, that's,
Okay, just making sure.
And and the concrete,
I'm sorry.
and the concrete?
Well, not all of it, but
32 feet of it.
I'm
That was-
confused on where that is.
there's concrete underneath there was underneath that structure from, used to be the walkway around. They used to go around the steps, walk onto
Enclosed
that.
structure.
The enclosed structure was a bluestone slate concrete patio in there. That concrete's right over top of it. So there's no difference in what was there. I'm proposing if I move those posts back 1 foot, that I cut that concrete instead of it, have a foot back, post back a foot, then you're seeing concrete from there. I remove that concrete that runs east to west along that. I take that concrete out.
That's the 32 foot.
That's 32, the deck is 32 feet long.
so, and 1 foot is concrete.
Is that new or old concrete?
Both.
That's new, below it's old. It's poured right on top.
So all of it's coming out, the new and the old.
No, well, for
Oh,
1
no.
foot.
Just
At 1
1
foot.
foot of it.
1 foot, it's about 8 inches thick right now.
Okay,
That'll come out 1 foot back, 32 feet long.
And that's the edge of where adjacent to the neighbor's property. That's that
Yes.
1 foot.
So what's the need of the concrete?
She said she wants the concrete out.
Okay.
Yeah, we're proposing, so we've removed 84 square feet from the front, 32, now we're proposing an additional 32 square feet as mitigation for the variance request.
And the columns or the posts, whatever you call them,
Yeah,
we're gonna move them 1 foot.
back.
But what about the actual deck itself? Is that?
That's going to come back 4 inches off the property line, so it'll have a slight
Overhang.
overhang.
What
Cantilever.
is the property line? What survey are we
Well,
using
we're
to
gonna-
determine that?
We're so,
I want to be the arbitrator. Why can't we just get the objector and we'll agree what survey we're going to use? Yeah. I mean, it's going to be hard for me to be surveying it myself to decide
well,
who's wrong.
why don't we have Mr. Brzezowski talk
We're
about,
going to need to hear from the objectors too.
yeah, that's
So
fine.
So the upper deck is coming, whatever property line we agree
4
on, the upper
inches
deck
in.
is coming into that property line.
Right.
It's not
To the
staying.
property.
Yeah, the 2013 survey shows we're not over, but the 2 more recent surveys show that we are over. Our recent survey from Mr. Brzezowski, but he shows it a smaller amount. He shows 0.3
Okay,
feet, 0.3 feet. Their survey shows that one part 0.5, and then it goes down to 0.3.
there's no reason why that's small with difference, just agree to hers, and
It's-
then there's not an argument.
It's inches. It's inches.
Since if you're gonna have to cut the new line.
Yeah, he's gonna,
It's agreed to a lot already.
That's why I agreed to move it back a foot. If it's sitting right now, I move it back a foot, then I'm out of
well,
any of her
And you're gonna correct the deck
the deck is gonna be cut back 4
4
inches off the property line.
to her survey.
Brian, are you agreeable to just use the neighbor survey?
Yes.
All right, that solves my arbitration.
Look at Frank. He's-
You're out of work.
Deidre, do we have a deal?
So are you saying that the fence then would go in the 1
Yeah, I
foot
got
that
it.
you're cutting back?
Once I cut back that foot, I'm gonna put a fence inside that
That
1
1
foot area,
foot area?
close to the property line that I'm allowed to by code.
you'll comply with the code requirements for the fence.
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
Yeah, so that's why the foot,
All right.
that's out of my area, so I can put a fence there. So now I'm protected, my stuff, I do not have to go on her property ever again.
Right.
Mr. Telvecchio, hold on a minute.
You
Let's,
can't.
let's have some more. You need to rest before we hear from Ms. Moore.
We've rest our testimony and, but available to respond to questions or
Subject to the
issues.
Amendment as agreed to and testified to by Mr. Singer, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Singer.
Thank you.
You have to-
Do you mind if I move it?
you gotta-
Oh, no. I just don't want to confuse all the first.
Oh, okay, she can, okay.
Yeah.
Good evening, ladies. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
could hold it.
Hold it. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Attorney Deidre Martin. I am representing Lisa Vecchio. I'll try to keep this really brief. So my client is directly south of the applicant, which I think everybody knows at this point. So my client is lot 2 in block 61, and her address is 15 South Bay Avenue, Beach Haven, New Jersey, 08008. My client's property is the property in which the applicant's deck encroaches upon. What I do want to get into evidence is my client's survey that was recently done by Frank DeSantis, and we have him on Zoom this evening. So if I could have Frank DeSantis sworn in as a.
Let me ask you this, Ms. Martin. You just
Yeah.
heard the applicant testify under oath and agree as a condition of approval to use your survey. So if you, I think it's a great idea to mark it into evidence.
Yeah,
It will be attached to the resolution.
Okay.
As a condition of approval. That will be the survey that shows the property line from which all
Okay.
of the setbacks will flow.
okay,
Okay?
yes. So what will we mark this in
We
as?
don't need it.
So let's mark that for A1 through 7. How about O for objector, O1, okay?
Sure. Yeah, I have multiple.
The applicants agreed and this is the survey that as a condition of approval. This is the survey that's going to be used to determine where the setbacks are.
Right
So
or
This is O1.
Right or wrong?
Okay, so we can all agree I don't need Frank DeSantis. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, so I want to make sure that we just get it on the record what the agreement is, and I just want to make sure I understand. So the deck that is enclosed, that is depicted on Horn Tyson Yoder's variance plan that was submitted by the applicant, will now be unenclosed,
Correct.
and all of the concrete that is underneath that will be removed.
No,
No.
no.
How much?
1 foot along the edge closest to your client's property, 1 foot for the whole 32 foot, so 32 foot of concrete. That's what we're proposing.
So my client is asking that all of the concrete be removed.
That'll be up to the board, but that's fine. That's understood.
Thank you. And then we are okay if the, what do I want to call them? The 6x6 posts that are there are moved back a foot from my client's property line so that they're on the applicant's property.
That was already agreed to by the applicant.
Thank you. And there will be an overhang of the deck that currently exists. It will be brought back
4 inches.
4 inches off of my client's property.
Correct, based on the
Okay.
survey marked as O1.
Okay. That's good. Now, because this structure that exists illegally, which is on my client's property, and it's been there for quite some time, I would ask that the board, as a condition to the approval, put a timeline on when this encroachment has to be modified to get it off of my client's property in conformance to what we have agreed to this evening, so that 3 years later, we are not in the same position. And I would ask, as a condition of this, that the removal of the encroachment is done in a good, workmanlike, professional manner, and that my client's property is returned to the condition it was in prior to this encroachment.
So with respect to the first request, Mr. Talvecchia, is your client agreeable to a timeline within which to do
Yes,
this?
we would say within 3 months after the expiration of the appeal period. We have to get building permits and all of that. We don't agree to remove all the concrete that our proposal is
I
1 foot, yeah.
understand, and the board will decide. So Ms. Martin, understand this, the work has to be done according to code. It will be inspected by the appropriate borough officials. That's always a condition of approval.
That's good.
Okay. That's fine. That's always in every condition of approval, okay? Any issue as between whether or not your client agrees that it was or wasn't, that's a neighbor dispute. This board doesn't get into that. So restoring of her property, that's not for this board. They don't make those determinations. If she thinks her property's not been restored, I'm not inviting litigation. By all means, I have neighbors, but she'll have to take that up with her neighbor. The board can't do that. The board's not gonna come back or take a look at this. That's gonna be for her and Mr. Singer to figure out. And possibly litigate if they have to. This board doesn't do that.
I have seen other land use boards do it.
Okay, this board will not do that because I'm going to instruct them, that's beyond their jurisdiction. But your request is understood, and as I said, all the work will have to be done in accordance with Borough Code and be inspected and approved by the appropriate borough officials. That's for sure.
That's good because we are concerned about the structural integrity of the structure.
I understand and fully appreciate it, and I'm sure Mr. Singer understands too, as a retired firefighter.
Thank you. Okay, we're good. We can rest.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, well, I just want to. All right, can I have a motion to open this application to the public?
I motion to open it to the public.
Second,
Second, Tom.
is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this application? Anybody on Zoom? No hands up. Okay, can I have a motion? Close it
Motion to
to the
close.
public. Thank
Tom.
you, Tom.
second it.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, we have a list of things here. I guess you all have written them down that go into this. Can I have a motion to approve or deny this application?
There's some further discussion of the concrete. I think that was not a,
Well,
I thought they had said that that's all she wanted was a foot.
what doesn't matter, okay, the objector has said what she wants.
Right.
The applicant has said what he's agreed to. The board will make the decision to grant or not grant it. What the applicants agreed to is remove 1 foot of concrete along the 32-foot width or distance of
The deck.
the deck, where it's just underneath the deck.
And once we put a fence in, you're not going to see whether there's concrete or not. And we do plan to use that for storage. So concrete will work better for that purpose. It has no impact on the neighbor visually or otherwise. And the 1 foot we are removing is where the fence would go. So what she's going to see under the fence is dirt, not concrete. So I think, you know, all in, I think we've more than met the neighbor's request. That's the only disagreement. 4 inches off the property line for the deck. We're using their survey. 1 foot up for the posts, get rid of the enclosure. I think my client has, you know, reasonably worked with the neighbor to address their concerns. I mean, we just have a pre-existing condition. We don't want to be on their property. That's why we reconfigured the stairs.
So just the concrete under the deck is not increasing impervious coverage because the deck above it is already impervious coverage.
Correct.
I mean, I tend to agree that the concrete isn't going to be an issue. And it's a better idea to have the concrete there if you're going to store stuff on it.
Right,
If you put the fence up, you're not going to see it anyway.
right.
So I would recommend you go with the applicant's suggestion. I think the objectors have gotten quite a bit, in my
I
opinion.
agree.
So is there a motion to approve the application as amended? And if I need to go through what that means, I certainly will do that.
Motion to approve, Tom,
As amended.
as amended.
Second, Jamie.
Jamie second.
Mr. Meadow,
Yes.
Mrs. Ballmiller,
Yes.
Mrs. Leonard,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Jenna,
Yes.
Mr. Tinquist,
Yes.
Mr. Balbo,
Yes.
Mr. LaFredo,
Yes.
Ms. King.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And it was a long night. Thank you.
Tom and Balbo.
The only one that's happy is Frank. See, there's that.
I don't have to. I did my application. You saw me in action. Oh, well.
One for the.
Jim, don't ask me to arbitrate.
Yes.
I'm gonna keep these photos. You don't want.
I should put one in the file. Here.
All right, moving right along. We have.
Yes, let's go.
Okay, yes. This application is 2024-11. Applicant is seeking variance relief for hardship and substantial benefit for a side yard setback proposed 11.2 feet combined where the existing side yard setbacks are combined 16 feet.
Hi, good evening. James Raven on behalf of the applicant, Mary Jo Altum. So this property is located 324 Iroquois Avenue. It's currently developed with a single-family dwelling. And what the applicant is proposing is to construct an elevator addition on the easterly side of the existing house. So it would be within the side yard setback. Currently, the existing side yard setback is 11 feet on that side. And with the proposed elevator addition, the side yard setback would be 6 feet, 3 inches in the area of the proposed elevator addition. So the elevator tower is 26 square feet. So that's the extent of the expansion of the property. And we are still within the permitted building coverage. The proposed building coverage is 32.54%, where the maximum permitted is 35%. So we're seeking relief with regard to the side yard setback. And also in the notice, as noted in Mr. Little's letter, to the extent a parking variance is required, we would request that as well. Nothing's changing with respect to the parking. However, this is a 5-bedroom house, which would require 3 parking spaces. The architectural drawings show how 3 cars could fit on the property, but in reality, there's a driveway in the front. And this house was just built, I believe, in 2019 or 2020, and this is how it was approved. Nothing's changed with respect to the parking.
So is, just so I'm clear, the board's clear, Mr. Raven, is the variance to allow for just 2 instead of where 3 are required, or is it 1 where 3 are? What are you asking the board to approve?
I guess it would be technically, it appears that only 1 space would fit within the property line in the driveway, even though the applicant can testify that multiple cars park there, but they hang out into the right of way beyond the property line. So it appears to me, and I can have Mr. Lord clarify, but 1 space is really, I believe all we're providing. You could angle and maybe get 2. I guess it's a better question for Mr. Lord, but so John Lord is going to testify regarding the variance plan. Will Essery from Handline Architecture is going to testify regarding the elevator shaft, and Mr. Essery is going to testify to the location. There were other options explored, and this was the best location, even though it's in a non-conforming location. And then I have Mary Jo Altum, who's been waiting patiently on Zoom, who will provide some testimony as well. And first, I'll call Mr. Lord.
Mr. Lord, do you swear affirm the testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Raven?
Thank you.
Mr. Lord, if you could briefly recite your qualifications for the board, your licenses.
Okay, I'm a licensed professional engineer, professional land surveyor, professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I think I've testified here probably 20 years ago or so, but not recently. Testified all over the state, in those various positions.
Your licenses are still in good standing, sir?
Yes, they are.
accept it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Lord, you prepared the variance plan that we submitted with this application?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and if you could just give an overview for the board of what we're proposing and what variances we're requesting.
What we're proposing is the variance we're requesting is for the 6.2 feet side offset to the elevator enclosure. The rest of all of the other zoning criteria are within the allowable zone, the zoning requirements. We're just requesting this minor variance, side variance for the elevator itself. The location of the elevator is basically about the only spot you can put it that provides access to all the floors of the house, which the architect can speak of. As I said, all the other criteria are zoning criteria are matched. It does not impact the neighbor. The house that's the offset of the neighbor's house to the side that the elevator on is I had to put my glasses on. It's 12.9 feet. Their house is, so there's plenty of room between the two houses, so that this minor variance to the elevator shaft would not affect the neighboring house. That's basically it. As far as the parking goes, the original plot plan for the house showed 3 parking spaces in the front, one in front of the garage, one parallel to the right of way, but still within the property, and one on the other side on the what would be the left side of the house. That was what was originally approved on the original plot plan with the 3 spaces. Can you do that? Yes. Is it convenient to do? No, but you can fit 3 spaces on there. But the one in front of the one garage and the one in front of the house are easily done.
So you're asking for a variance?
I believe it should be for 2 parking spaces. We're proposing 2 where 3 are required. Yeah, there is a 3rd space that can be parked along that east side, but currently it's all grass right now and it's not part of the driveway. Sure, you could park a car up on the grass there, I suppose, but.
Confused. How do we get a 5-bedroom house without having 3 parking spaces?
I guess, as Mr. Lord's saying, the way the plot plan was originally configured was showing one on the east side, which it fits, as I stated, but it's a grassy area currently.
Oh, so they took one of the parking spaces and made it a yard. Is that what you're saying?
I believe, no, I believe this is how it's always been. We can ask Mrs. Altum, but.
We have made no changes. This is how we purchased it.
Yeah. Do you want to do that now? Okay.
Where's she go?
We lost her.
Let's stop sharing.
Jim, when was this house built?
I believe 2019.
Yes.
Mrs. Dalton, can you raise your right hand, please? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Raymond.
Thank you. Mrs. Altum, you're the current owner of the property, correct?
That is correct.
And when did you purchase the property?
2019, we took possession on Labor Day weekend.
Okay, and you were the first owner to occupy the property after it was
Correct.
constructed?
Correct. It was new construction.
Okay, and the configuration of the front yard has not changed since the time you purchased the property?
Yeah, that's how it was when we first saw it and still when we bought it.
Okay. How do you typically park cars in the front of in the driveway area?
One car fits easily in front of each garage door and another car can fit behind. It probably encroaches on sidewalk a little. And when necessary, we pulled cars over onto the grass.
Okay. So you can fit 3 cars in practice. I don't know if all 3 cars fit completely within the property line.
So, Mr. Raven, it's been a long night already. Are you or are you not asking for a variance from the required 3 off-street?
To the extent the board thinks one's required, yes, it's hard for me to,
Well,
because you can park it on the grass.
I don't know, I'm confused about why this is a problem. We haven't made a change.
because Mr. Raven can explain it to you, ma'am, but simply put, because in Beach Haven, if you have a 5-bedroom home, you have to provide for 3 off-street parking spaces.
Right. And when I originally submitted the application, I did not include this issue. Mr. Little's office, upon reviewing it, noted that they weren't certain that 3 cars really could be parked within the front yard.
Question,
Sure.
who built your house?
Do you know who the builder was?
My son's there. John, do you remember the name?
Wait, if he's gonna testify, I swear him too.
Right.
Oh, I'm
It's okay.
sorry.
That's okay, it's okay. And if you don't know, ma'am, that's okay.
It'll come to me, but I
Okay.
don't know right now.
I know who built it. All right, come on.
I believe it was Trade Winds.
It's trade winds.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
You go.
Travis Lepley.
You got lucky.
Mr. Little, let's hear from you on the parking issue so we can figure out whether or not a variance is or isn't.
Well,
needed.
they're gonna need a variance because there's
only
not
provide-
enough pavers in the front unless you're gonna count the lawn as a parking space, and we don't
Right.
count lawns as parking spaces.
So we're
So
gonna, we
at
can
the
agree, we're
minimum,
gonna
you need a variance for one,
Okay,
or if the board doesn't grant that part of the variance, then they have to create that 3rd space
understood.
with pavers on site.
Understood. So the board understands, so the application is, in addition to the side yard setback variance, also requesting a variance for parking to allow for 2 parking, off-site parking spaces where 3 are required.
Correct. Yes.
And how does the impervious coverage tie into all this now?
Well, with 3, I believe, Mr. Lord, correct me if I'm wrong, in your impervious coverage calculation in Beach Haven, all parking spaces count toward impervious coverage regardless of the surface. And I believe, Mr. Lord, correct me if I'm wrong, you counted 3 parking spaces within your impervious coverage calculation?
Yes.
Did you count the whole front yard since?
Well, right
No,
now,
just-
the plan shows 75% is permitted, and even with the elevator, you're only at 50%. So you could easily
Well, I understand that.
increase it.
If they counted the front yard, you have to get to those parking spaces, so you need
Right.
drives to all. of
Yeah.
them.
Mhm.
So is all that area included? That's
Right.
what I'm asking.
Well, I'm just saying that they can meet, they're not asking for a variance for impervious if they add a 3rd parking space. They're gonna be under the 75%.
You have to be under 60%.
60%.
Yeah.
Or
it's-
under 60, I'm sorry, you're right. They have to,
So what I'm saying
you're right.
is.
Yeah, you'll still be under 60 because you got another 10% to go. You can definitely
Well, they're
add
at 50.
pavers and get another one in
Well,
there.
but that's a non-issue if we grant the parking.
Correct.
Right. I think, Ms. Altum, you probably, if the board were inclined to grant the variance, would prefer to keep the lawn area the way it's currently configured and the way it's always been?
We did want grass, but we're willing to do whatever the board thinks we need to do.
Okay.
We purchased the house believing we met code. I'm not trying to not meet code.
Sure, I understand.
It's whoever did the landscaping didn't meet code. Somebody took that 3rd parking space and landscaped it.
Mhm.
It can't be used as a.
That was all before we saw the house for the first time, so I can't answer to that.
And Mr. Lord, with respect to the variance proofs, this is a C2 variance. What purpose of the municipal land use law would be advancing with this application?
Well, we would certainly not be detrimental to any of the zoning or anything like that.
And does the elevator addition constitute a safety improvement for the house as a whole?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and enhances the general welfare
Yes.
within the home?
Yes,
And as you stated, there's no substantial detriment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance, in your opinion, as a
That-
result of this addition?
that is correct.
Okay. Are there questions for Mr. Lord?
Mr. Lord, before Mr. Raymond gets to his next witness, I assume you've reviewed Mr. Little's review letter dated August 23rd, 2024.
Yes.
And if the board
Yes.
were to grant this application, your client would agree as a condition of approval to comply with all the comments and suggestions contained in Mr. Little's letter.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Raymond, another witness?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Lord. At this time, I'll call Will Essery.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm trying to see where does the elevator exit out to the front, back, side?
That's going to be.
That's it. Okay. I'm looking at the plans.
Sure. Do you swear affirm the testimony I give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Raymond?
If you could state your name for the record?
Hi, my name is Will Essery. I'm the principal of Handline Architect.
We can't.
Speaking of that
Oh, that one's not working.
I got you. I'll try not to yell too. My name is Will Essery. I'm the principal of Handline Architect, licensed in New Jersey.
And you're, so a registered architect in the state of New
Registered
Jersey?
yes, sir.
Okay. And you've testified before this board previously?
Yes.
Does the board accept Mr. Essery's qualifications?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Essery, if you could just give an overview of how you came to that design for the elevator.
So in playing with the design for the house that existed, we always try to avoid low-hanging fruit at first and look for something that fits within the plan. And messing around with this plan as it exists, putting an elevator that accesses all floors without changing the way the house is used, without creating new hallways and ripping out bathrooms and rebuilding at great expense. This is the easiest, the most economical, and makes the most sense to put the elevator in a spot by the entry, not creating a detriment to entering in through the living room space, the dining nooks, or through the kitchen. And the only place that would come up on the second floor to make it fit would either be through the master bathroom or through a bedroom, in which I would need to create a hallway and lose an actual usable bedroom and space. So it makes sense that we stay within the lot coverage issues and just ask for a small variance for the side yard, knowing that the neighbor next to us is also in favor. I'm speaking for somebody who's not here. Sorry about that. But it seems to work best in the design, the layout, the movement through the building. And we're only going to access the garage, the first floor, and the second floor. There is no access to the roof deck.
That answers my question. Thank you. I saw it.
Oh, forgot.
And Mr. Essery, the area of the elevator tower is 26 square feet?
Yes. Yep. So it's 26 square feet, and we're staying below, the building coverage is 32.54 with the elevator. We're not asking for anything outside of just the side yard setback. That's the goal.
I don't have any further questions.
Anybody have any questions for this witness?
You stayed in here that peak building height.
It's 33 feet, I think.
Does that include the railing?
That I do not know if it includes the railing. We took that number from an existing survey space. Let me see if it's on the actual.
Because railings are part of the height
Yes.
requirement.
But you're not proposing railings, right? You're just.
No, I'm not changing. Our roof peak is below. Our roof peak, everything we're proposing is below whatever's there. We're not touching anything to do with the existing roof or the railing. My my new roof for the elevator tower doesn't even reach the main roof of the existing
Right.
structure.
Then the other thing, on the square footage of the house, how was that calculated?
Using the drawings from the previous builder. And taking the floor area based on the survey and our drawings. And
That was the floor area on the other drawings?
I would believe so. I would have to go back and look through that. Was
Zillow has it in there, 2680 square feet. That's why I was wondering why. Now usually they get the plans.
They're real estate though.
Yeah,
You can't
so-
believe anything.
I don't want to speak for somebody else, and I would want
They're real accurate.
to, yeah.
John Halpern has a question on Zoom. John?
Yeah, did I hear correctly that what was testified that the neighbor is in support of this application?
Yes, I don't know if Mr. Askin is still on. I saw him earlier. Is there still a
Yeah.
Bill A? on
Yeah,
Zoom?
Bill Askin. Yeah, I'm still here.
All right, we'll get to the public. Mr. Askin, as you well know, hi, it's a pleasure to see you virtually. We met a couple months ago.
John's question.
Is that he thought he heard testimony that the neighbors in favor of the
Oh.
neighbors, Mr. Askin, who's on Zoom, who we'll get to.
Correct.
when we open to the public. And he can confirm or deny.
Any more questions for this witness? No? Okay, can I have a motion to open it to the
Go
public?
ahead. You done, Mr. Raven?
Yeah.
I do just have a couple of follow-up questions for Mrs. Altum. Mrs. Altum, if you could just explain to the board what brought this application, what was the reason for wanting the elevator?
About 6 months after we purchased the home, my husband was diagnosed with a progressive neurological disorder. And it became apparent that he was not going to be able to enjoy the house. So we started this application. Unfortunately, he passed away in March. But we've realized now how fast everything can change. And we think the house would benefit from, people being able to use it later in life.
So it would allow everybody that utilizes the house to use it in a more safe manner?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mrs. Altum. I don't have any further witnesses.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. All right, can I have a motion to open it to the public?
I'll make a motion to open it to public.
Second. Thank you. Is there anybody in the public who'd like to comment on this application? Anybody on Zoom?
Yeah, hi, it's William Askin, Askin. I live at 320 Iroquois Avenue.
All right, hold on, Mr. Askin. Gina, if you would, can you put Mr. Askin's video up, please? Mr. Askin, can you turn your video on?
Let's see if I can figure out how to do that. Oh yeah, here it is.
There we go.
No, we have to figure it out.
There you go.
Gina, is it coming up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't have you here yet, Bill. Bear with us.
There he is.
There we go.
We got him.
We got you.
Mr. Askin, can you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Now he's muted.
Now we lost your volume.
Try again.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Askin.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. William Askin, 320 Iroquois Avenue. I am the owner of the property directly to the east of the applicant's property.
Okay.
I'm here this evening just to confirm my support for the application. The neighbors are very good friends of ours. They were very polite and considerate when they started even thinking about coming forward with this application. And they come and we talked about it. They approached us and asked us if we would have any issues at all. And I can confirm that we did not then, and we do not this evening. We fully support what they're trying to do with their house.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Askin.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Can I have a motion to close to the public?
Second, Jamie.
Okay. You guys you can sit down. Can I have a motion to approve or deny this application?
That's with the parking variance?
Yes, with the parking variance. I assume
I have a question. What is the hardship that we have to consider?
this wasn't a hardship
This wasn't
application.
hardship.
This was a C2 application, correct, Mr. Raven?
Right.
Oh, okay. Relief. Okay.
Okay, we have a
Pardon me,
motion.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
No, it said here that it's a hardship
Here on what?
on our,
On the agenda?
yeah.
I think that Mr. Raven, I don't know, maybe that's because it was in the application initially, but this is not a hardship, correct?
That's correct. In the application, I may have checked both.
Yeah,
Yeah, hardship and substantial benefit were both checked, but it's a C2 substantial
That was the
benefit.
Testimony that you put on this evening, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Good point, Mr. Tinquist, but it's a C2. It's a substantial benefit.
okay. We have a motion on the floor to approve or deny
So the two variances would be that a part of the motion, you're approving the side yard setback variance and a
the
variance
parking.
for parking to permit 2 off-street parking spaces where 3 are required. That's the motion that's on the
Can
table.
we separate those?
We need separate.
There's no second yet, so if there's no second, another motion to be made, but
Right,
you can't
no.
separate them. You can vote yes, that's the motion that's on the table.
Okay.
It includes both. You can vote yes or no. As can any member.
Is there a motion? on the table?
There is.
There's a
no
motion on
second
the
yet.
A
table.
second.
Thank you.
All right, so motion by Calvo, second by Val Miller. Yes,
No, I'm,
am I right?
no.
Who made the
Who
motion?
made the motion?
I didn't hear a motion.
I didn't hear one.
I swore somebody made, okay, I apologize.
I'll make the
It's been a long
motion.
motion. Chair Leonard made the
I'll
motion.
make the motion.
Okay,
I interrupted you.
That's what it
oh,
was.
that's right, thanks, Sal.
It's on your phone.
Jamie, you still second?
I still second the
Thank
motion.
you.
I still second.
Okay,
Okay, now we got it.
Sorry. Mr. Meadow,
Yes.
Mrs. Ball Miller.
Yes.
Mrs. Leonard,
Yes.
Mr. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Jenna,
Yes.
Mr. Tinquist,
Yes.
Mr. Valvo.
No, because I don't think we should lose out on the parking space. If there's a place, put the parking, if it's a piece of grass or something, I'm not sure how someone, we approve a property and then it gets built not to have 3 parking spaces. I'm not blaming the owner. It's just, it got built that way. She bought it that way. So there's something missing and I'm not comfortable with. Yeah.
okay,
So-
but that's
That's my no and why I'm voting.
understood.
Mr. LaFredo,
No, I approve the elevator, but not the parking space. I don't see why they can't just add pavers to make that a parking space.
Fair enough.
Ms. King,
No.
Motion carries. 6-3.
Thank you.
See you. What?
Oh, yeah.
oh yeah, 3-person.
No.
Okay, next on the agenda
Anyway.
is the approval of
Don't
the
worry about it.
August
She got the
meeting
variance.
minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Next are approval of bills for September 2024. All in favor?
Aye.
And new business is the approval of LBI collectibles.
That was one of, if I may, right, so that was one of our last 3-person subcommittee matters for the waiver, to request a waiver of formal site plan, because if the new ordinance is adopted, it will be handled differently, but we have confirmation that the 3 members, I know Ms. Edells is not here, but all 3 members have voted yes to approve, so in accordance with ordinance 167-9, I'm simply stating that for the record, so that application has been approved, and Gina, if you would let Ms. Martin know, she's the lawyer, I'll try to get you that letter. I know I tried to email it, there were some problems, but we'll just let her know that. Okay. Thank you.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion, Tom.
Second.
Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
I did. So, but we tested, like, here I was able to get something within the borough, but not, right.
Yeah, so go ahead. What do you say?
Yeah, it might be attachments outside
That
the
was the
borough.
building.
Within the borough, I got, because Nora and I was doing Oprah requests and it was working.
Change every single definition.
She probably could, yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah, but the
should be
building
able to, no
definition in here
problem.
is different than that.
We just took out tents, lunch wagons, trailers, dining cars,
I'm
auto
not-
cars, and
I'm
other
not-
stuff.
Electronics.
We didn't change the building definition.
It says. any